Thank you for joining us this evening for the new episode of Terrazzo Talks here in Dubai. Also, a very warm welcome and greetings from the United Arab Emirates to our viewers from other parts of the world. I'm Lovraj Talwar, the Managing Director of the Terrazzo Group. Today, we sit down with two eminent panelists, Mr. Kez Taylor, Chief Executive Officer of ALEC Engineering and Contracting, and Mr. Yu Tao, the Managing Director of China State Construction Engineering Corporation, Middle East. We will talk about the past, present, and future of construction in the UAE and attempt to determine future challenges and opportunities for those who are stakeholders in the sector. I have the pleasure to introduce Mr. Kez Taylor, CEO of ALEC Engineering. Kez graduated from the famous University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa, with an honors degree in construction management. Kez was awarded a bursary with Greenacre Construction in 1985 and continued to work with Greenacre until 2001. During this period, he worked on contracts in South Africa, Mauritius, and Zambia, and established a construction business in Namibia. Kez was transferred from Greenacre to ALEC in 2001 to establish a construction company in the United Arab Emirates. ALEC grew from a small business in 2001 to a large trusted contractor, part of ICD, delivering complex and iconic construction projects across different areas of operations. The company builds and provides construction solutions to exceed its clients' expectations for quality, safety, functionality, and aesthetics. We're greatly privileged to have a person as experienced as Kez for our session today. A very warm welcome to you, Kez. I would now like to hand over to my co-moderator, Yuvraj, who is the Business Development Director of the Terrazzo Group, and will be introducing the second panelist, Mr. Yu Tao. Over to you, Yuvraj.
Thank you, Lovraj, for that introduction. I'm extremely excited to be here with all of you once again on this edition of Terrazzo Talks. It's been a while. The purpose of the show, as always, is to engage with distinguished members of the community and answer and discuss some very relevant and important questions in today's incredibly challenging economic environment. As Lovraj said, today we have two incredible panelists in the construction industry in Kez Taylor and Mr. Yu Tao to help us do exactly that and answer all of our queries and questions. So I have the privilege of introducing Mr. Yu. So Mr. Yu is the Chief Executive Officer of China State. In September of 2004, Mr. Yu was appointed as the Managing Director of China State to start the establishment and manage the Dubai branch. China State is currently ranked 18th in the Fortune Global 500 list and consecutively ranked number 1 in ENR's top 250 global contractors list since 2016. After 15 years of painstaking efforts, China State Middle East has become one of the largest international contractors to operate in the Middle East, which is also one of the major overseas operation entities of China State Global. Mr. Yu is currently the President and CEO of China State, as I said, and further oversees China State's regional operations in the GCC and other countries. Mr. Yu was chairman of the Chinese Business Council in the UAE. In his current role, Mr. Yu has twice been ranked number 1 in Construction Week's Power 100 list in 2016 and 2020. So congratulations on the most recent award, Mr. Yu. And in 2019 was placed 9th on Forbes' list of top 50 regional executives heading global companies in the region. So amazing to have you both with us, and it's a privilege for me to moderate alongside Lovraj. The topic of this conversation is the current economic reality and the reality of the industry, the construction sector, really. We will pose 5 to 6 questions as usual that will bring to light some of the key issues surrounding the UAE economy, and we will then open the floor up to the audience to send in some of their questions, which we will then pose to both of our panelists. So with that, I'm gonna start with the first question, which either of you can answer. But just a little bit of an introduction to start with. I think the UAE's construction sector has been much talked about, especially over the last couple of months. The UAE construction sector recorded growth around 3.3% in 2019. Pre-COVID, this figure was expected to increase around 4.3 in 2020, Obviously, that has not happened, predominantly driven by a range of government initiatives. With the onset of the virus and the subsequent drop in oil prices, output is expected to contract 1.9% this year before recovering, recently announced, to 3.8% growth in 2021. So my question is fairly simple. If you could both just talk a little bit about your businesses, how has the last 2 years been? So pre-COVID and then obviously post-COVID, what are some of the challenges you faced? And are these challenges something you're familiar with? Has anything at all surprised you? So Mr. Yu, if you'd like to start.
Thank you. Year 2019, to a certain extent, is a good year for China State Middle East. We have signed reasonable amount of the contract, and we have executed most of our projects smoothly. However, the situation was changed all of a sudden in end of January 2020, as everybody knows, because of the COVID-19, which affect our operation and change the way we are working and pose a huge challenge to China State Middle East. Ever since the end of January, we start to rearrange ourselves in order to cope with the challenge of COVID-19. I think after 9 months, we are now living with COVID-19. We are continuing. The bad thing is that generally there is very few contract or tender going on, and the business is slowing down. We are still quite busy for the project in hand, but it's difficult to predict what will happen next year.
Understood. And Kez, how about yourself?
Thanks very much, Yuvraj and Lovraj, for organizing everything here. I think it's good that we get together as an industry and talk about issues. So for us, 2019 has also been a very good year for us in 2019. And we're expecting 2020 not to be a bad year for us, despite all the difficult circumstances that we've had to collectively face. So yeah, despite the circumstances, we've actually had a good couple of years. But looking into the future, it's obviously going to get a lot tougher for contractors moving into the future.
Understood. And Kez, how has ALEC really differentiated itself from the competitive pool that contractors are in? Typically, if you speak to most contractors that are small to medium sized, there's a lot of moaning and groaning, especially over the last year or two. You absolutely don't seem to sound the same views. So what tends to distinguish you from a very commodity driven sort of industry?
Look, I think we've been quite fortunate that we've always had a pretty healthy order book. I think we work in a niche market. And if we look at the contractors and the competitors that are around in the market at the moment, it's reduced dramatically. I mean, it really is a real pity what's going on in the market, that competent contractors are leaving the market and contractors that are in the market have been struggling. So I think if you're a healthy, competent construction group that is financially in a strong position, I think that you're going to be well set for the future. But it is really going to be survival of the fittest.
Mr. Yu, do you resonate with that view?
Certainly, I agree. It's tough time, and if you allow me to compare, 15 years ago, the contractor in the market are probably much more than the current number of the contractors. In financial crisis of 2008, a batch of the contractors were eliminated from the market. I think year 2020 is also causing a lot of trouble to some other contractors, and the number of the contractors are reducing. remaining contractor, if we can remain strong technically, if we can manage our company well, probably it's not really a bad thing in long run.
Understood. I mean, would you say it's fair to say that the biggest long-term threat to the industry sort of remains a lack of new project opportunities coming through the pipeline? I'm assuming 2021 and 2022 tenders that have come out are less than maybe what you'd forecasted for. Is that correct? Would you agree?
I think in general, I agree. If you look at the private sector, in the real estate development sector, the supply is already quite a lot. So to a certain extent, it's a bit saturated. So the development speed is slowing down, and the investment is reducing. And similarly, in the government sector, due to the impact of COVID-19, most of government is facing the challenge to have proper plan for their budget. The government income are reducing, so they have to rearrange or replan their development, and therefore in the public sector, the investment is similarly reducing. I do foresee in the coming 1 or 2 years, the contractor will probably face a bit more challenge.
Mr. Kez, do you concur with Mr. Yu?
Yeah, I think obviously, I think it is going to be survival of the fittest. I think, the strong companies are going to manage to get through this tough phase. I think there's a shift towards Abu Dhabi as well, where the government is still spending on their strategic projects that they want to go ahead with. Yeah. And then there's obviously going to be a shift towards Saudi Arabia as well. So a lot of consultants have already shifted from the UAE to Saudi. So, but if we look at the region, there's still only a handful of capable, competent players that are well set for the future. And in there lies an opportunity for the good players.
So is ALEC looking to focus more on Saudi Arabia over the next 1 to 2 years? Are you quoting some jobs at the moment?
Yeah, we are. We've set up an office in Saudi Arabia. We're going to be very strategic and select as to which projects we're going to pursue. But we are pricing projects there at the moment.
And are you bullish or are you cautiously sort of optimistic?
No, I think, I think you've got to select the right clients. You've got to select the right kind of projects. And I think you've got to make sure that your terms and conditions are reasonable and fair for both parties. And you've got to go in there with the right team that can execute in often a lot of these projects are going to be remote, and they can operate in that market effectively. We also will be looking at going in partnership with existing companies in Saudi Arabia.
Right. Mr. Yu, are you doing something similar in Saudi Arabia as well? Are you looking to?
I visited Saudi 10 years ago, ever since the financial crisis in Dubai. So I was trying to figure out what to do in Saudi. 10 years later, we have the company ready, but we didn't really have any operation in Saudi. But I look at the opportunity, I think. Certainly, Saudi is still considered a virgin land and compared with the maturity of the infrastructure of UAE, particularly with Dubai. So there are huge room to improve. With their population, I think there is demand in the real estate sector. China State is following probably a similar kind of approach. We are looking at the niche market, mega size project, government kind of investment. And we look forward to have a strong local partner to share the opportunity and reduce the risk together. We hope there is going to be breakthrough soon in Saudi.
Right. And just going back to COVID, if I may, I was meaning to ask when we were on the subject. there was a number of government initiative stimulus packages announced for many industries, construction being one of them. So as two of the largest contractors, have you benefited from any of the stimulus packages issued by the UAE government? And if not, I mean, what would you have changed, or how would you have liked government support to be different to what it was?
Look, I think, Yuvraj, where we've been pretty fortunate in this region is that the construction industry didn't shut down. At least we were able to keep the wheels moving and the construction projects continued. We asked government for two things. We asked them to not stop. And the other thing that we asked for is that we would be able to repatriate our labor back to their home countries. And we managed to do both of those things. So we haven't really received any stimulus packages or any support. But I think where we've been pretty fortunate in this part of the world is that we've been able to continue. And the fact that we've been able to do that, we've been able to keep the wheels turning. If the construction industry had stopped, I think it would have been catastrophic for all of us, including subcontractors, suppliers, main contractors, developers. I think everybody would have been severely affected because pretty much our costs would have been rolling and we would have had no income coming in.
Right, right. How about yourself, Mr. Yu?
Yeah, I think government is trying very hard to help the private sector. And the stimulus package is helping some of the small enterprise. But as a contractor, I think we didn't really benefit that much. The good thing is, I agree with Kez, the construction sector wasn't shut down. We have to take the challenge and rearrange ourselves and cope with the countermeasures for the pandemic. And it's quite helpful for us to continue instead to stop completely. It's very costly, and we don't know what to do if we have tens of thousands of the employee, and you can put them in the camp maybe for 1 week, but I cannot imagine how we can keep them in the camp for 1 month or for half a year. It's impossible. Yeah. So yeah. I'm glad the government has been very practical, giving the industry a kind of green light to continue. I think that's a good approach.
And what, there's, I mean, I can say as a subcontractor and as a supplier, many of our clients have come to us and asked for discounts on contracts that we'd already pre-agreed prior to COVID. Have your promoters come to you for contract discounts from original contract prices that were agreed? And have you sort of had conversations with your subcontractors as well? Or has that not been a reality for either of you?
Look, I think pretty much on our side, we haven't asked for any discounts from our subcontractors due to COVID. So, and pretty similar, the clients that we've been working for, they haven't done the same. So, yeah, I think you've got to be pretty careful that, in a difficult situation, you don't go and harm your important stakeholders even further. I think what was pretty good out of COVID is that what we found was that there was very good collaboration between all parties. People did assist each other wherever possible. And I think out of a difficult situation, I think there's a lot of good teamwork that came out of it. But no, we haven't asked for any discounts from our supply chain.
Right, right. Mr. Yu?
I think we were approached by a couple of the clients trying to explain to us for their difficulties and the request for consideration of the discount. Similarly, we have requested our subcon suppliers to join us to consider whether there is such kind of room and opportunity. Unfortunately, it's not that practical, and in fact, it's not feasible. The COVID-19 is not really giving us any saving. However, it has increased our cost quite a lot. And we have therefore, answer it back. And most of the subcon suppliers are suffering probably even more than the main contractor. Typically, the subcon suppliers are much smaller in size. And in the lockdown period, they have experienced much bad, situation than us. And that's, I think, something we have to face and we have to go on. And today, I think the discount is no more the topic. After the shock, most of the clients stabilized and figure out what to do. And I think we are coming back to normal.
Understood. So that was an interesting thing you said, that it's no longer sort of about discounts. I mean, is there any blessing in disguise that either of you can take out of COVID-19 from an economic perspective, obviously not from a health perspective, but any sort of good thing that has come out of it? Is it work to sort of correct the market that was always strapped for cash in the past and made it less about sort of price and payment terms? I mean, how do you see it? Is there any silver lining in any of this?
Look, I think where we benefited out of COVID is, I mean, one of the things that we realized we got to do is we've got to work with really good information. So together with our IT departments, we set up dashboards that were live. That information was shared with people across the board. And we were able to react to the situation, which we didn't really know how things were going to pan out. We could take decisions around data and information that we managed to assemble pretty quickly. So I think one of the benefits out of COVID is that it's forced us to step up and become a lot better at the way that we handle information, IT, the digital side of things, and the way that we disseminate information and knowledge. So I think there's on that side, there's been quite a lot of good that's come out of it.
Understood. Is that the same for China State as well? Is there anything else?
I think there is some benefit. Now I'm no more required to travel that often. So maybe sometime we need to wake up midnight to join our meeting, join the meeting in Beijing. But I think to me, I have improved my efficiency. It's a little bit struggle when you wake up midnight. And similarly, even though in UAE, we tend to use the online meeting more often, I think it's a good change. At the beginning, maybe people feel it's a little bit reluctant to accept. But slowly, it's become part of our practice, part of our life. And I think there is less amount of traffic on the road. It's not a bad thing to the city. And the quality of life have therefore improved as well.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Kez and Mr. Yu. It's been fantastic having you both on the show. Your responses have been brilliant and transparent, and I'm sure very helpful to the sector. I'm sure a lot of known people are on the show. I can see their names from where I am, and everybody's watching and listening. So I'm sure it's been very helpful to everybody. Thank you very much for being so forthcoming. And I'm sure we'll have another opportunity to be on the show once more at a later date. All the best to you both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lovraj, Yuvraj.
Thank you guys so much.